Chapter 983. Xie Jingxing looked at Gao Yang and asked, "What is the matter?" Gao Yang's brows were tightly knitted as he took Shen Miao's pulse, and then Pei Lang's pulse. In front of everyone in the room, he shook his head. Strange. Pei Lang's injuries are too serious, but until now, there is no movement. There should be some reaction, but it is like he is asleep. The princess' flesh and blood were not injured, and after taking the sedative, she should have woken up, but until now she has not woken up. So, Xie Jingxing's face was as heavy as water as he stared at Gao Yang aggressively. This is somewhat strange. Uncle Tang said cautiously. Could it be another poison? It is just that physician Gao did not discover it previously. Impossible. Gao Yang flatly denied. Both of their meridians are not signs of poison. Instead, it is faintly discernible, and one cannot see any problem, but they have not woken up. Then what can be done? Luo Tan was somewhat anxious. My youngest Biao sister cannot keep sleeping like this. There must be a reason. Gao Yang glanced at Xie Jingxing, and Xie Jingxing's gaze made him somewhat unable to withstand it, so he could only say, "Wait for another half a day and see." In this half a day, Xie Jingxing could only stay by Shan Miao's bedside, and not to mention half a day, even when it was deep into the night, Shen Miao still did not wake up. It was the same for Pei Lang. Uncle Tang asked Gao Yang, "Gentleman Gao, what is going on?" Even if foreign and gentleman Pei did not wake up, there must be a reason. Even you cannot see the reason? Pei Lang's heart was filled with unspeakable bitterness. Until now, Shan Miao and Pei Lang did not have any symptoms, but they just could not wake up. Even a physician would have to judge based on the patient's reaction, but other than the faintly discernible pulse, it was like an ordinary person sleeping. How could he see it? It was just that facing Xie Jingxing's increasingly cold and sharp gaze, Gao Yang also felt the pressure. Afterwards, Jiyu Shu also rushed over when he got the news, and everyone was worried together. Luo Tan could not help it, and was so anxious that she was about to get angry. She was about to cry as she said, "Could it be that I have offended something these days? First it was brother-in-law, and now it is youngest Biao sister. If anything happens to youngest Biao sister, how can I explain to Gugu and Gufu?" She blew her nose again. "I came here and swore that I would protect little cousin's sister. Who knew that little cousin's sister would end up in such a state? I'm so ashamed." Gao Yang patted her on the shoulder. "It's not your fault. If I stay by her side, at least no one will be able to take advantage of her." Finishing, she thought of something and said angrily, "There is also brother-in-law. If he was not angry with Biao youngest sister, he would not let people follow Biao youngest sister to attack Biao youngest sister." Gao Yang was helpless. The matters between Xie Jingxing and Shen Miao was really not something that he could meddle in. It was a fact that Luo Tan was in a state of rage, and it was a fact that Shen Miao refused to wake up. If youngest Biao youngest sister does not wake up, then he will regret it, Luo Tan said angrily. Those Furins are biased. He is always the person beside youngest Biao youngest sister's pillow and still do not believe that youngest Biao youngest sister has no feelings for him. She thought about it and clenched her fists. After thinking about it, there is no need to hide this matter from brother-in-law. Youngest Biao youngest sister had done so much for him, but in the end she was taken advantage of by others. If youngest Biao youngest sister is really not good, then one must let her speak clearly. If youngest Biao youngest sister does not speak, then let me speak. What do you want to say? Jiyu Shu asked curiously. Luo Tan glared at him. Of course it is a bigger credit than that pair of siblings from the Yi family. Luo Tan went to find Xie Jingxing in a huff, and Gao Yang was afraid that she would cause trouble, so he quickly followed behind. When they reached the door, they saw Xie Jingxing coming out of the room with a calm face. Ever since Shan Miao's accident, Xie Jingxing's expression had not changed. Chapter 984. Luo Tan said, "Prince Rui." She did not call him brother-in-law anymore. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at her. Shen Miao did not wake up, and his heart was vexed. He had no patience with others, and his face was awe-inspiring. But Luo Tan had a temperament that did not care about anything, and when her temper flared up, she was not afraid of even the Heavenly Emperor. She said, Biao's youngest sister did not allow me to tell me previously, but now that she is lying on the bed, if she does not say it, I will say it. I did not have any scruples and did not think as much as she did. It would be too much a loss to hide what I did and not let others know. Uncle Tang, Tai, Yi, and the rest who rushed over after hearing the news were also standing at the side and looked at Luo Tan with some surprise. Those Furins all said that when you were bedridden, Biao's youngest sister did not come to see you. You felt that you were left out, and Biao's youngest sister is a heartless person, so you were unhappy and got angry with her? Luo Tan stared at him and said, But you do not know that she did not come to see you during those days, not because she did not want to, but because she went out of the city to seek medicine for you. Going out of the city to seek medicine for Xie Jingxing. When Xie Jingxing's eyes landed on Tai, he lowered his head and did not dare to look at Xie Jingxing's eyes. Previously, it was because Shen Miao let the servants hide it, but after Shen Miao returned, she inexplicably started a cold war with Xie Jingxing. Once Xie Jingxing's heart turned cold, the surrounding people would not dare to touch him at this juncture. One wanted to wait for a few days before speaking, but one did not expect such a thing to happen. Speak clearly. Xie Jingxing took a step forward. Luo Tan said, You do not know, right? It was said that there was an expert in Phoenix Head Manor who could go against the heavens and change one's fate. She glanced at Gao Yang. At that time, Gao Yang was refining the antidote for you, and Biao's youngest sister gave you the 3 vitality recovery pills, but it could only protect your life for a while. If the antidote was not found within 10 days, your life would not be guaranteed. But on the 4th day, your condition was critical, and the imperial physician said that you would not last past 7 days. Biao's youngest sister heard the legend of the expert in Phoenix Head Manor and brought me and a few guards to Phoenix Head Manor. Xie Jingxing's gaze shook. What kind of person was Shen Miao? She was rational and astute in analyzing the pros and cons. Moreover, she did not seem to believe in ghosts and gods. She actually believed in such absurd words like defying the heavens and changing one's fate. She was really desperate and anxious. The Phoenix Head Manor isn't far from Longyi, but it's extremely difficult to find the place where the expert lives. That day we rushed through the night and almost lost our way in the forest. There was also a pack of wolves, but Biao Mei was not the least bit afraid and insisted on lighting a torch to find the way through the night, fearing that she would not be able to come back in time to save you. On the 2nd day, we found that master. That master used the art of Chimen Dunjia to bring me and Biao Mei, who had no martial arts, into the valley. He said that there was a spirit grass that could cure hundreds of poisons, but his little cousin had to pay a price. Actually, the price was not that difficult. It did not require money or lives. We need people to pick out the bugs from the red-sleeved grass in the valley and fertilize them one by one. Gao Yang and Jiu Shu were surprised, and Uncle Tang and Tai Yi were even more shocked. They had never heard of these things from others and did not know of the origins. Uncle Tang's heart was suddenly enlightened. No wonder Shen Miao was in such a sorry state when she returned to the residence. Compared to Yi Mei, it was even more unbecoming of Rui Wang Fei's decency. At that time, he did not know the reason, but now he understood. It turned out that Shen Miao did not sleep that night and was busy being a gardener because she was seeking medicine for Xie Jingxing. For a moment, there were some sighs. To be able to condescend to do all these, other than being able to bend and stand tall, what was more valuable was the intention. Chapter 985. But Luo Tan's anger seemed to be vented the more she spoke. Does it sound like there is nothing much? But she had been spoiled since she was a child, filling the entire valley. Even those peasant women were not able to do it alone. She did not sleep earlier and immediately started to move and was busy for the entire night. You people who live extravagantly most likely have never touched a fat pole in your entire life. Since she could do this, why is she lower than that pair of siblings? Luo Tan looked at Xie Jingxing and said, It is true that the Yi siblings saved you, and they do have a life-saving grace, but my youngest Biao sister is not inferior. Say that she was not by your side, but you can go and ask the servants in the residence of the prince of 1st rank. before she left the residence. How many days did she stay by your bedside? Did she leave? Did she take care of you without rest? Could it be that she could not be compared to the Yi siblings that she only met once? Now that my youngest Biao sister has fallen to this stage, I feel wrong for her. When His Highness the Prince of First Rank married her back to the Great Liang, what did he promise? But you can't even believe her. Even though she has many faults, there is one point that is beyond doubt. Her sincerity is beyond doubt. When Luo Tan finished speaking, her face was already flushed red, as if all the suppressed anger in her heart had been swept away. She then looked at Xie Jingxing's expression. There was no sadness or joy, and his expression was calm. But the calmer he was, the more one felt a chill. It was as if, under the calmness, there was a boundless storm. Finished speaking? He slowly asked. This tone was so cold that Luo Tan could not help but shrink her neck. Gao Yang quickly stood up and said, "Now is not the time to pursue this. The urgent matter is to think of how to wake both of them up." Xie Jingxing sneered. "Is this not simple? Just capture the Yi siblings." Ji Yushu was surprised for a moment. "Third older brother, what do you want to do? Since she is abnormal for the Yi siblings, then there must be a problem with the Yi siblings. No matter if they're the ones behind the scenes or not, there is no reason to spare them." Xie Jingxing turned around and was about to leave, but he was pulled back by Gao Yang. "No, now they're not the Powerlessly family, but the Yi family. What is the outcome of alarming the Yi family?" "Let go," Xie Jingxing said coldly. "Calm down," Gao Yang said. "If Wang Fei really hates the Yi siblings, she must have compromised for so long because she did not want to harm herself. Aren't you dragging her down?" "Not bad, third older brother." Ji Yushu also chimed in. "The Yi family is not some small family in Longyi. If you take action like this, one fear that it will bring trouble to the residence of the Prince of First Rank." "She can endure, but I cannot," Xie Jingxing said. "The Yi family has touched their bottom line." Third older brother. Ji Yushu still wanted to persuade, but suddenly Ba Jiao's voice was heard from outside the courtyard. The usually smiling maid now seemed to be a little flustered. "Master, someone is coming." Tai Yi frowned slightly as if he was dissatisfied with Octagonal and Nice's loss of composure. He asked, "Who is it?" "It's the Taoist priest whom Madame met the other day at Fengtu Manor," Octagonal and Nice said hesitantly. "What?" Luo Tan's eyes widened. Ji Yushu, who was grabbing on Xie Jingxing's sleeves, could not help but let go and looked at the octagon. "Priest." Octagonal and Nice nodded his head. In the hall, that strange Taoist priest who was dressed in tattered clothes was touching this and looking at that, as if it was the first time he entered the residence, and his eyes were filled with curiosity. Shi Xiang and Song Yang stood awkwardly at the side. They were acquainted with Qi Yin, Taoist priest. But when Qi Yin, Taoist priest, entered the door, he used such a familiar tone to establish a relationship with the both of them, making them somewhat uncomfortable. Chapter 986. When Xie Jingxing and entourage came to the hall, Priest Qi Yin was preparing to remove the gem eyes of a red-crowned crane from a vase and asked Fennel, "Can this poor Taoist take this away?" "Priest Qi Yin," Luo Tan shouted when she saw him. When Qi Yin saw her, he smiled. "Young Lady Luo, long time no see." Luo Tan secretly pondered in her heart. It was obvious that not much time had passed, but she could not care about other things at the moment, and said, "You came over because you know that something happened to my youngest Biao sister, and specially came to change her fate?" Even though Luo Tan felt that this priest Qi Yin was deliberately making things difficult for others, but he seemed to have some ability, or else Xin Miao would not believe the other party so much. Priest Qi Yin looked at the silent Xie Jingxing behind Luo Tan and smiled. This poor Taoist cannot change fate and can only read fortunes. "This young brother, what do you think?" "I do not believe in the heavenly way," Xie Jingxing said. "The heavenly way is not trustworthy, so why would humans persist in seeking answers from the heavenly way?" Priest Qi Yin shook his head and said, "This foreign's fate is strange, and others are unable to fathom it, and it is all up to her own choice. Neither you nor I can do anything about it." Luo Tan could not understand Priest Chi Yan's words and quickly asked, Taoist, what should my youngest Biao sister do now? Is the spiritual herb that I gave her still there? Priest Chi Yan asked. Luo Tan was puzzled. When we returned, the Prince of First Rank's poison had already been cured, so naturally the herb was useless. One do not know where youngest Biao sister placed it. This servant seems to know, Jingzhi said, and brought everyone to Shen Miao's room. Sure enough, she found a dusty box under the dressing table and opened it to take a look. There was a stalk of ordinary-looking medicinal herb inside. Luo Tan's eyes were sharp and said, It is this. Take it and fry it. Qi Yin stroked his beard. Wait. Xie Jingxing looked at the strange Taoist. Why should I believe you? You cannot believe this poor Taoist, but you have no other choice. Taoist priest Scarlet Flame let out a long sigh. This herb was found by this madam, but when I first found it, I said that it would be futile. Even without this herb, you would still be safe and sound. There is no such calamity in your fate, and everything she did was in vain. Everyone was stunned when they heard. However, it was not in vain. Strange Taoist priest's face showed some relief. Those who love others will always love them. Those who save others will always be saved. If she had been a little bit insincere and perfunctory back then in the valley, she wouldn't have obtained this stock of spiritual herb, and she wouldn't be here today. In the name of saving you, this spiritual herb is actually saving her. She sacrificed herself for you. At this moment, Luo Tan faintly heard some clues and asked, You mean you already knew that this spirit grass would not be used on the prince, but on my Biao Mei? Youngest Yin would Tian's foreign, and you have Tian and Yan's fate and son, so foreign. Strange Taoist looked at Luo Tan and said with a smile, You are worth teaching. Xie Jingxing stared at him. You want her to be a herb farmer? There was a murderous intent in his eyes. The Taoist took a step back and hid behind Gao Yang. He coughed twice and said, She is such a calamity in her life, and this poor Taoist has reduced it to the smallest. Compared to her life, isn't it much easier to be a herb farmer? But why is she still not awake? Gao Yang was puzzled. I'm also a doctor and have checked her illness, but I could not find the source. There seems to be nothing wrong with her. She should have woken up today, but she has not woken up for so long. What is the reason? The Taoist said, This poor Taoist said that this is a calamity in her fate. What do you mean by tribulation? I don't understand. Luo Tan said, Why don't you tell us directly, after my youngest Biao sister ate that herb? When will she wake up? Qi Yin smiled. The herb is not for her to eat. It is for another injured person to eat. The other injured person could be Pei Lang? Xie Jingxing whispered. If you dare to play tricks, I can take your life now. The evil aura is too heavy. Qi Yin shook his head. That person gave up his life for foreign, but it was because of some entanglements in his life. This foreign obtained the herb and just happened to be able to settle this debt. Then what about my sister-in-law? Ji Yushu asked. Strange Taoist looked at Shen Miao, who was lying on the bed. Her expression was calm, as if she was asleep, but her face was pale. There was a feeling of unreality. She picked out the bugs for the red-sleeved grass in my valley, but she could not pick out the bugs in her heart. This calamity is a blessing for her and also a misfortune. This poor Taoist had met her 3 times and was worried about her twice. This last meeting with her is for the sake of this fate. The matters of the human world are not perfect. There are regrets and unwillingness. She wanted to seek an answer, but no one told her. Strange Taoist narrowed his eyes. Now she has found a way, and the answer that she is seeking is right in front of her. No one can help her. You cannot, she cannot, and this poor Taoist cannot. So wait patiently. The Taoist looked at Xie Jingxing. That's your fate. Chapter 987. The yellow sand was endless, and the wind was blowing the flags. There were many wind and frost along the way, and the sun, moon, and stars were just decorations. The escorting guards were scattered and did not have much respect for the people in the carriage. A maid-like young lady walked over from the back of the convoy and jumped onto the carriage before handing a bowl of porridge to the person inside. Your ladyship, the porridge is a little cold, but it can still be eaten. Currently, there is no village ahead, or ends behind, so it is better for you to have a mouthful. The female in the carriage was still young, but her expression was very haggard, and her attire was not very exquisite. Upon closer look, it was the style from a few years ago, and because she was skinny, it did not fit her body. She lifted up the curtain of the carriage and asked, "Where are we now?" "Walk a bit more, and one would be able to reach the official road before dark." Bai Lu smiled. This servant had asked those people, and within 5 days, one would definitely be able to return to the Ding capital. Shuang Jiang also smiled. Once one returns to the palace, your ladyship's bitterness will be over, and sweetness will come. Bitterness will be over, and sweetness will come. Shen Miao smiled bitterly. Broken people would not be able to return. She was talking about Jingzhe and Guyu. Hearing this, Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang's eyes were filled with sorrow and no longer spoke. Jingzhe was willing to be a concubine in order to rope in the powerful officials. In the first year that Shen Miao went to the Qin country, news came that the wife of the powerful official found a reason to beat her to death. As for Guyu, Shen Miao clenched her fists but died in Huang Fu Hao's hands to protect her. 5 years. A full 5 years. In the 5 years in the Qin country, the last bit of arrogance in her body was ground away. She clenched her teeth and compromised just so that one day she could return her homeland and reunite with her pair of children. However, the heavy price they had to pay for this was not something that could be described by outsiders. How difficult was this journey? There were not even many escorting guards, and just looking at the convoy of carriages, who would have thought that this was the honor guard of a country's empress? The people she brought to the Qin kingdom at that time had either died or dispersed in the past 5 years, and they were almost gone. Just like on this journey back to the country, if not for Mo Qing's protection, she would definitely not be able to return alive. Shen Miao sighed. Fortunately, all the suffering was not in vain. 5 years had finally passed. Just as he was thinking about it, it was time for the carriage to continue its journey. However, not only did it not start, there was a commotion in front of them. She frowned slightly and lifted the curtain of the carriage to ask, "What's going on?" Mo Qing walked over from the front and said, "I met a strange person and came over to ask for water." Before he finished speaking, one saw an old man dressed in gray appearing behind him and looked at Shen Miao with a grin. "Foreign, I am dying of thirst. Give me some water to drink." This old man was dressed in a strange manner, and his body was smelly as he stared straight at one, making one suspicious. It was not that he was not willing to give water to drink, but Shen Miao's identity was special, and if she met someone with evil intentions, one feared that something would happen. Mo Qing ordered people to hold back this old man and not let him go near Shen Miao. However, Shen Miao smiled and said, "There is a drought along the way, and the heavens are not happy. A bowl of water is equivalent to a life. Give it to him. I do not lack this bowl of water to drink." Since Shen Miao had spoken, Mo Qing was straightforward and ordered people to bring a bowl of clear water for the old man. The old man gulped it down in one gulp and patted his stomach before pushing away the guard's hand and stood up. He gave a proper bow to Shen Miao and said, "Foreign is kind and generous and saved this poor Taoist's life. This poor Taoist must repay this bowl of water." "Poor Taoist?" Shen Miao was surprised for a moment before smiling. "Are you a Taoist?" "My Buddhist name is Qi Yan." That strange old man looked at Shen Miao and shook his head. "Foreign's appearance is extremely valuable, but one's life is shallow and cannot bear the noble fortune." Chapter 988. What nonsense are you talking about? Bai Lu frowned and looked at Shen Miao. "Mother, foreign, it might be some Jianghu swindler. Do not listen to his nonsense." Mo Qing also made a move to drive this strange old man away. "Wait," Shen Miao said. "It is quite boring along the way. Listen to what others say." That old man pretended to bow again. There is black air between foreign's brows. One fear that it is not good. At the end of the road, it is an ominous sign. If one were to turn the horse around, one would be able to avoid this calamity. Foreign, this poor Taoist still advise you that this road is the Yellow Springs, and one must not walk on it. Once walked, one cannot turn back. The more you speak, the more excessive it is. Shuangjiang was so angry that her face was livid. Who are you cursing? Shen Miao, however, had a good temper. She had stayed in the Qin country for a long time, and when facing anyone from Mingqi, she would have the joy of meeting someone from her hometown. Even if this old man was speaking nonsense, she was not angry and only smiled. Many thanks, Taoist priest, for the reminder, but I must walk on this road. My children are on this road, and I have to return home. The strange Taoist priest sighed deeply. As expected, he looked at Shan Miao. Meeting by chance, this is fate for you. Finishing, he took out a red string from his sleeves and was about to pass it to Shun Miao, but was stopped by Mo Qing. He could only hand a red string over to Mo Qing, and when Mo Qing did not see anything strange, he then handed it over to Shun Miao. This red string is this poor Taoist's token of gratitude to Foreign. Foreign can tie it on your wrist, and you'll be able to achieve your own fate. He solemnly said, Foreign must remember that the way of heaven is treacherous and depends on human effort. This poor Taoist can see one's fate, but cannot change it. The person who can change Foreign's fate is not this poor Taoist. The heavens have the virtue of cherishing life, and if there is a calamity, there is also fate. This red string is a question, and one day Foreign will also find your own solution. Finishing, he laughed out a few times before turning around and striding away. This Taoist priest was very mysterious, and the few prophecies that he said were extremely inauspicious. Thus Bai Lu and Shuangjiang were somewhat unhappy. Bai Lu said, Your ladyship must not take that strange person's words to heart. Most likely his mind is not clear. Don't wear this thing. Shuangjiang also said, It is very inauspicious. But Shen Miao looked left and right and felt that the red string was extremely cute and inexplicably loved it so much that she could not bear to part with it. Instead, she tied it on her wrist and smiled. I have already said that since it is fate, it is also fate for us to meet by chance, so just wear it. It doesn't matter if it's fake. Isn't it better if it's real and has more spirituality? Since the words were spoken like this, Bai Lu and Shuangjiang could not say anything more. Mo Qing said to the carriages in front to set off and started to move again. The sandstorm in the distance almost covered their figures, but the strange old man's figure could no longer be seen on the road ahead. Upon returning to Mingqi, it was not like what Shuangjiang said. Bitterness is over, sweetness begins. The world was constantly changing. The situation would change, and so would people's hearts. As the Empress, apart from this position, there was nothing special about her. Sometimes when he thought about it, he felt that it was no better than the days when he was humiliated in the Qin kingdom. When he was in the Qin country, those injuries were on the surface, but in Mingqi, it was in the dark. It was as if one had suffered a hidden loss, and one could not say it out loud, but one would be laughed at for nothing. Shen Miao sat in the Kuan-Ning palace and looked at the somewhat withered red-sleeve grass on the table. The red-sleeve grass was sent over by Mo Qing and was said to be a rare spiritual herb. It looked very good and was like a woman's sleeves that fluttered in the wind. Thus it was named red-sleeve grass. It was just that one did not know why it had recently withered, and Shen Miao was not in the mood to take care of it. She had been back in Mingqi for a few years, and in these few years, her life was not considered good. Chapter 989. There was an additional Mei Foreign in the inner palace. Mei Foreign was delicate and intelligent, charming and gentle, like a riddle that attracted one's gaze to her for a long time, unwilling to leave. In the beginning, there were times of heartbreak. The man that she once loved would use that kind of doting gaze to look at the woman beside him. She thought that he treated everyone with the same coldness, but later discovered that it was not the case. It was just that that person was not herself. After many days of heartbreak, she gradually became numb. The pain and dispiritedness gradually turned into hatred and unwillingness. Because of Fu Sheng. Fu Sheng always took away too much of Fu Xiuyi's favor, and her child, Fu Ming, was obviously sitting in the crown prince's position and was obviously talented and hardworking. But at the end, he was like a prince that had fallen out of favor. Fu Xiuyi could personally teach Fu Sheng how to write and discuss politics, but was stingy to give Fu Ming a look of concern. When asked, he would say that Fu Ming was the crown prince and must be mature and steady. What was the matter with pestering imperial father every day? But every time she saw Fu Ming's disappointed eyes, Shen Miao's heart would feel as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. The Shen family was also not doing well. Luo Shuiyan's illness was getting worse, and Jing Chu and Shen Xiao were dragging it out. The Shen family's reputation was getting worse, and Shen Xian had aged a lot. Fu Xiao seemed to be suppressing the Shen family, and Shen Miao was faintly aware of it. But how could one in the inner palace clearly know about the matters in court? The only way she could come into contact with these was through Pei Lang, but Pei Lang was loyal to Fu Xiao. Even though Pei Lang's relationship with her was not bad, but he would always be loyal to Fu Xiao first. Shen Miao's infatuation with Fu Xiao had long turned into ice after watching him being together with Mei Furen for the past few years. But in her position, she had to sit firmly in the position of Empress and fight for some opportunities for Fu Ming and Wan Yu. There was news from the Xiongnu side that Mei Furen seemed to want to urge Fu Xiao to marry Wan Yu over. This was what Shen Miao could not tolerate. However, Mei Furen's methods were getting more and more brilliant. Everyone could see Fu Xiao's doting towards Fu Sheng. The Shen family was getting worse day by day, and there were too many people who stood at Mei Furen's side. Throwing stones at someone who was down, everyone wanted to step on them. In addition, Mei Furen's brother, Li Ku, had recently helped Fu Xiao to settle several important matters. Thus, Mei Furen's status in the inner palace rose steadily. Shen Miao knew what the officials were thinking. They were thinking about when to change the crown prince and when to abolish the empress. But Fu Xiao still wanted to save face. She was the first wife, and for Mei Furen to go over her head, it would not be that simple. She fought back and forth, going round and round, but her heart was already exhausted. If it wasn't for this pair of children, he sometimes felt that it would be better to burn the entire palace to the ground. That way, the world would be at peace. Bai Lu walked in and said, "Nyang Nyang, the clothes for the palace banquet have been prepared. It is better to comb your hair early." Shen Miao complied. Shuangjiang had died a year ago, and Mei Furen's methods were very good. She did not even let off the maid by her side. After going around in circles, only Bai Lu was left. Tonight was the Ming Qi's palace banquet. The new year was approaching, and Fu Xiao wanted to reward the officials. Of course, the most important thing was to send off the little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and Xie. The Marquis of Lin and Xie died in the battlefield of the northern Jiang, and now his son was going out to battle again. In fact, this timing was not good, and one would feel that this departure was somewhat tragic, but Xie still accepted the commander request. Shen Miao and Xie did not have much interaction because of the subtle relationship between the Shen and Xie families. Ever since the time of Xie Ding in the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and only Xie Jingxing was supporting the door. This unavoidably made one sigh. Initially the southern Xie and northern Shen. Until now, the Shen family was getting worse day by day, and the Xie family was also gradually declining. It really made one sympathize with the death of a rabbit. Chapter 990. But Xie Jingxing had his own path to walk, so how would Shen Miao's own path not be difficult? She said, "Comb the hair." The musical instruments confused one's heart. This palace banquet was exceptionally lively. Fu Xiao, he had not been this happy for a long time. His usual stern expression was much gentler, and his smile became especially joyful. Shen Miao looked coldly at Fu Sheng, giving him a toast and the happy and harmonious appearance of the father and son, but her heart was somewhat cold. Fu Ming sat at one side, and Wan Yu also sat properly. Those officials always praised the crown prince and princess for being so sensible at such a young age and had the demeanor of a little adult. This kind of dignified bearing was not something that everyone was able to grow up to. Even though it was polite words, it was not far from the truth. But one did not think that if one could wantonly act coquettishly, who would be willing to be sensible? Sensible was just forced out. Wan Yu and Fu Ming also tried hard to be close to Fu Xiao, but children's thoughts were the most direct and pure. They could feel Fu Xiuyi's coldness and gradually became polite and courteous. Shun Miao sat beside Fu Xiuyi but saw that Fu Xiuyi would exchange glances with Mei Foreign from time to time. Mei Foreign was smiling happily, and Fu Xiuyi also had a slight smile on his face. Shun Miao thought that both of them must be really happy. But what about the main character of this palace banquet? Shun Miao involuntarily looked towards the man on the left side of the banquet. That young man's appearance was peerlessly handsome, and his posture was indolent as he sat diagonally. His dark purple robes were somewhat large, but it could not hide his high spirits. His lips had a smile as he slowly drank his wine, as if the noise in the banquet had nothing to do with him and was incompatible with the liveliness. Shun Miao laughed in her heart and felt that this little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was somewhat similar to her. The banquet was lively and joyous, but in fact the heart was not happy. Xie Jingxing wanted to walk on a bloody path where life and death were uncertain, and she did not know what the ending of her life would be. Being attacked from all sides and besieged on all sides, it was a matter of life and death hanging by a thread. She also took a wine cup and poured herself wine to drink. She drank one mouthful at a time, but she was extremely restrained. The Empress had to be dignified and elegant, and must not be a pampered concubine. When the banquet was over, the guests dispersed in twos and threes. She sat in her seat and heard Mei Foreign say, "Your Majesty, tonight this concubine has prepared good wine. Your Majesty and this concubine will watch the fireworks together." Sheng also said that he wants to compete with Your Majesty in chess skills. Fu Xiuyi laughed and pointed at Mei Foreign's nose. "This competitive nature is exactly the same as you." Shun Miao's sentence, "When you and the Crown Prince also want to accompany the Emperor throughout the year," was swallowed back. Looking back, the sadness in the eyes of the two children made her heart ache. However, he endured the pain and put on a calm expression. But on this new year, he couldn't fall asleep no matter what. She coaxed the two children to sleep and felt that the two children were not enthusiastic about the arrival of the new year. There were sounds of fireworks coming from the palace walls. It was already late at night, and in this kind of night, Mei Foreign's palace was the best place to see fireworks. The three of them must be very affectionate. Shun Miao put on her clothes and ordered Bai Lu to bring a jar of wine and a bowl before she went to the garden. From the corner of the garden, one could see the fireworks. Only a small half of the fireworks could be seen, but even a small half was extremely gorgeous, almost lighting up the entire sky. One could imagine the other end to be able to see the whole picture, what kind of scenery it was. She took out a bowl, and Bai Lu was somewhat distressed. Shun Miao waved her hands, telling her not to open her mouth. Chapter 991. This firework is really beautiful. Shun Miao's voice was low, and there was a hint of drunkenness. When can one watch a complete set? She suddenly smiled again. Most likely not. Just as she was speaking, she heard footsteps coming from behind. Boots stepped on the snow, making a sha-sha-sha sound. Bai Lu jumped in shock. "You all!" Shun Miao turned back and saw someone brushing away the heavy shadows of the trees and walking forward. A person dressed as a guard was at the back, and the person standing in front was tall, wearing a purple robe and green boots. That pair of peach blossom eyes reflected the fireworks in the night, making it exceptionally bright and moving, looking very beautiful. Marquis Xie of the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and Shun Miao narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. That person seemed to be somewhat surprised and made a tisk sound. Fu Xiuyi's Empress is actually a drunkard. The guard behind him said, "Master, we should leave." Bai Lu was also somewhat nervous, as she did not know why Xie Jingxing was still in the palace. But an empress and an official, if they were to be seen standing together, one did not know what would happen. Especially these days, Shun Miao was struggling in the palace, and once someone caught hold of a reason, they would not hesitate to splash dirty water on her. At this time, it was better to be as far away from this air of the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and Bai Lu did not dare to disturb others, and this garden was very remote. So she said in a small voice, "Shizi, the Empress is slightly drunk, and this servant is about to help her back. Shizi, please pretend not to see it." Xie Jingxing glanced at Shun Miao and laughed. He did not seem to be interested and turned around to leave. Wait, Shun Miao called out to him. Bai Lu was startled and could not wait to cover Shun Miao's mouth. But Shun Miao stared at Xie Jingxing. She was somewhat drunk at this moment. Ever since she went to the Qin country, she had never wantonly drank wine. However, the saying of a cup of wine to solve 1,000 worries was not false. When one was drunk, one would be relaxed and would do many things that one would not do on normal days. She said, "Bin Gong heard that you're going to the northern Jiang?" Xie Jingxing hugged his chest and said with a smile that was not a smile, "What instructions does Empress have?" Tai Yi and Bai Lu stared at Shun Miao. Shun Miao smiled and took out the bowl that she had just drunk from the table and poured the wine from the jar into it. She indicated to Xie Jingxing to see young talent, an eternal character, outstanding and unparalleled in the world. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows, and Bai Lu was so embarrassed that she could not wait to drag Xie Jingxing away. How would one praise a flower in front of others? Beijiang is a very bad place. Shun Miao patted his shoulders. Her stature was petite, and she had to tiptoe when she patted others' shoulders. She then looked at Xie Jingxing and said half seriously and half drunkenly, "Heard from father that not even a blade of grass grows there, and the terrain is treacherous. There are many poisonous snakes and insects, and it is easy to fall into a trap. Your trip will be fraught with danger." This official thanks Nyang Nyang for her concern. Xie Jingxing casually said, "Thousands of years of infamy in the annals of history, a loyal heart to repay the Son of Heaven." She gulped down the wine in her mouth and waved the bowl in Xie Jingxing's hand before swallowing it in one gulp. Bai Lu and Tai Yi jumped in shock. The former did not think that Shun Miao would drink it just like that, and the latter was surprised that the Empress would be so forthright. Shun Miao wiped her mouth and gave a burp. "This is Ben Gong's toast to you. You must return triumphantly." Xie Jingxing stared at her. Her lips still had some wine that had not been wiped clean and was sparkling on the side of her lips. It was very beautiful, and under the moonlight, her face had a delicateness that could not be seen during the day. Without the layer of Empress shackles, she was actually a very delicate and pretty female. Chapter 992. His lips hooked up, and there was some evilness in his smile as he slowly said, "It seems that the Emperor has given the Empress a cold shoulder." Bai Lu's eyes widened. This Xie Jingxing's words were too presumptuous, but she did not dare to directly drag Shun Miao away in case Shun Miao made any noise and alarmed others. Then she would not be able to clear her name. After Shun Miao finished drinking, she swayed as she picked up the wine jar and poured a full bowl before handing it to Xie Jingxing. "You also drink." "Why should I drink?" Xie Jingxing was baffled. "You and Ben Gong are in the same boat." Shun Miao said, "Who is in the same boat as you?" Xie Jingxing found it funny. Shun Miao had already raised the wine bowl and was about to feed it to his mouth. Bai Lu turned pale with fright. This was too ambiguous. Tai was also extremely surprised, but Xie Jingxing did not speak, so he would not make a move. Xie Jingxing was caught off guard, and when he pushed Shun Miao away, a lot of wine spilled onto his clothes, but when he looked at Shun Miao, he finally smiled in satisfaction. She said, "You and I have a bowl of wine of affection. When you return in triumph, then come and watch the fireworks with Ben Gong." Xie Jingxing felt that today was really inexplicable. So when a female was drunk, they would not be rational. Even the usually dignified and elegant Empress was like a different person. "Your Highness the Empress, it is better to find His Majesty to watch." He tidied up his clothes. Shun Miao was sad. Ben Gong have never watched fireworks with him. Xie Jingxing stared at the female opposite. Her head was slightly lowered and the corner of her mouth was raised, but her eyes were bitter. His heart inexplicably softened a little and said, "Good, good, good. This official promises you." Shun Miao's eyes brightened as she looked at him. "Then it is settled." Xie Jingxing nodded his head. Shun Miao thought about it and shook her head. "Words have no basis. One must have a token." She then started to touch the hairpin in her hair. Bai Lu was surprised for a moment and secretly thought that it was not good. If the Empress thing was on Xie Jingxing's body, then it would be a crime of adultery. He was afraid that Shun Miao would give any handkerchief or hairpin to the other party and suddenly saw the red string on Shun Miao's wrist. He had an inspiration and said, "Your ladyship, your red string is very good." Shun Miao's eyes landed on the red rope, and her heart moved. She quickly untied it and took Xie Jingxing's hands and tied it for him seriously. Xie Jingxing's gaze landed on her slightly raised eyelashes. They were moist and seemed to be mixed with the cold air of winter. It inexplicably made one's heart itch. Shun Miao fastened it for him and smiled at him. "This is Ben Gong's token for you. Take this as a letter and wait for your triumphant return." "Thank you, Your Highness." Xie Jingxing smiled carelessly. "But this official does not have any token to give to Empress. Why don't I give the Empress a wish?" "Wish?" Shun Miao looked at him. "When we meet again in triumph, this subject can grant Your Highness a wish. The wish that Your Highness wants, this subject can fulfill it. I will do my best to fulfill it." Shun Miao said, "It is a promise. It is a promise." With a boom sound, a corner of the sky was once again illuminated by the bright fireworks. Both of them looked at it at the same time, but it was as if they had a tacit understanding and were exceptionally in sync. Bai Lu was also stunned. Fireworks were fleeting, but some things would not disappear, such as this night. When Shun Miao woke up again, she only felt a splitting headache. As she rubbed her forehead, she stood up and walked to the table. Actually slept for such a long time. Bai Lu brought the hot soup to her and said, "Your Highness drank too much yesterday. Sober up first." "Drank too much?" Shun Miao's movements paused. One did not drink much at the palace banquet. Bai Lu was somewhat guilty. Most likely the wine in the palace banquet was too strong. Shun Miao nodded her head and sighed. Ben Gong's bad habit of not remembering anything once drunk has not changed for so many years. But it has been a long time since I was drunk. Bai Lu nodded her head and heard Shun Miao looking at her empty wrist. "Why did the red rope disappear?" Bai Lu said softly, "Most likely it was lost." Shun Miao sighed. Indeed, it would not last long. The sun was blazing and the departing troops were at the city gates. The young man in the lead was riding an imposing horse and had a lazy smile on his face, but his eyes were so cold that one did not dare to look at him. "Master, everything is ready," Tai said. Xie Jingxing took a look behind him. Once out of the city gates, the future path would be completely different. It also meant that he had made a clean break with the past and would no longer be involved. Eventually, he would have to leave. There is nothing worth to be nostalgic about here. The white-clad male at the side waved his fan and said, "It has nothing to do with you. Perhaps everyone is hoping that third older brother would not return." The pine-green-robed gentleman smiled and looked to the front. "No matter what, one will finally return home." "Not necessarily." Both of them looked towards that purple-clad male. Xie Jingxing lowered his head and his gaze landed on his wrist. There was a red rope tied there, and the end of the red rope was neatly and carefully knotted, as if it would not loosen no matter what. "Isn't this something that females wear?" Ji Yushu asked. "Why are you wearing this for?" "After drinking someone's farewell wine, one owes someone a wish." Xie Jingxing said, "One will return it after returning." He retracted his gaze and raised his whip. "Rise." Set off. Chapter 993. Time was like an arrow. The sun rose and set as in the past. Then how many rounds of flowers would bloom and how many rounds of flowers would wither? The moon would have waxing and waning, not to mention human affairs. For example, the declining Shun family and the increasingly neglected Empress. Like an old woman struggling in her twilight years. Princess Wan Yu died of illness on the way to the marriage, and Empress Shun was unable to recover. Even though she was still dignified and virtuous, upon closer inspection, there was a faint aura of death in her eyes. That aura of death would only flash like a weak star when it saw the crown prince, like the embers in the ashes, but it looked like it was about to extinguish. The beautiful lady in palace attire smiled as she looked at the green-clad male in front of her. "Imperial tutor, to take a drop of blood from the Empress' fingertip, it should not be a difficult matter for you." Pei Lang looked at the woman in front of him. She was as charming as a cat in the dark night, shrewd and beautiful. Otherwise, that aloof emperor who always prioritized benefits would not hold her in the palm of his hand. From a female's point of view, she was undoubtedly seductive, as she grasped a man's thoughts in the palm of her hand. From a person who wields power, she did a good job, retreating in order to advance. She never took the initiative to mention status or ask for gold and silver, but made others willingly offer things up. Not only that, she would even snatch other people's things, instructing others to fight, relying on the heart of an emperor, relying on the support of brothers, quietly and slowly grasping what she wanted in the palm of her hand. She looked as charming as a flower, but had the heart of a snake and scorpion. That year, the little princess, who was only 10 years old, was forced to the end by this person. In comparison, the master of the 6 palaces was still not as vicious as this one. Perhaps it was because she came from a loyal family like the Shun family that no matter how her character changed, there was still some leeway of kindness in her bones. But it was this kindness that made her destined to always be inferior to the other party's methods. Mei Foran saw him in a daze and said, "Imperial tutor?" Pei Lang recovered to his senses and asked after thinking, "What does Imperial Consort Shun want the Empress fingertips blood for?" "You do not need to know what to do." Mei Foran's smile was like a flower. Even though she was already an Imperial Consort, she still had the initial title. Mei Foran, upon hearing it, one could tell that it was 100 charming and 1,000 tender, extremely moving. It made one forget that in the depths of the palace, the delicate and beautiful flowers also had poisonous thorns. She said, "Imperial tutor can clearly see what kind of situation Empress is in now." She pointed at the rattan grass that was sandwiched between 2 trees outside the window and said with a smile, "When this rattan grass just sprouted, it was sandwiched between 2 trees. He didn't have to choose anything. He could live a good life casually. But when it gradually grows up, the taller it is, the stronger the wind and rain. I have to find a place for myself to climb." She looked at Pei Lang. "There's a tree on the left and a tree on the right, but it can only choose to climb one tree. These 2 trees occupy the same area and are fighting over the same piece of land. There's only so much land, so one of the trees will definitely be cut down. This vine must be chosen carefully. If it climbs up the tree that is about to be cut down, it will be uprooted." Mei Foran looked at Pei Lang with a smile. "Imperial tutor, how do you think this rattan grass should be chosen?" Pei Lang stared fixedly at the 2 trees outside for a while. After a while, he turned his head and said, "This subject understands." Mei Foran smiled in satisfaction. After Pei Lang left, a palace maid came out from the back to pour tea for her and said softly, "Your ladyship, will the Imperial tutor really take the Empress fingertips' blood?" The Imperial tutor and the Empress seemed to be not bad. In terms of friendship, Pei Lang had known Shun Miao for a longer time than Mei Foran. Chapter 994. The Imperial tutor is an intelligent person. Mei Foran picked up the tea and took a sip before smiling. Otherwise, when the princess was engaged, he would not have stood by and watched. Moreover, he has hidden thoughts in his heart. He is such a bright wind and bright moon, and is so rational that he does not allow himself to make any mistakes. Naturally, one must cut the weeds and remove the roots. I am helping him, and it is too late for him to accept it. The palace maid nodded her head as if she understood and said, "But what that monk said, to be able to borrow the Empress's fate to your ladyship, is that true? No matter if it is true or not, the position of the mistress of the 6 palaces is set for me." A trace of ruthlessness flashed in Mei Foran's eyes. "It is only a fingertip's blood. Give her luck to me, and when my imperial son stabilizes the Ming cheese country, I will be merciful and burn paper money for the 3 of them." The palace maid nodded her head and did not dare to speak. Shen Miao's illness was somewhat serious. Fu Ming had just come to see her and accompanied her to chat for a while. Shen Miao wanted to find someone to ask about the recent situation in the Shun residence, and, just as she left the courtyard, she saw Pei Lang. Pei Lang greeted her, but Shen Miao was very cold. On a matter of Wan Yu's marriage, Pei Lang's cold attitude made one's heart turn cold. In any case, their friendship had been going on for so many years, and Wan Yu had once called him teacher. In the disgust towards Fu Xiao, he had naturally shifted to the disgust towards Pei Lang, and she did not even want to take another look at Pei Lang. Heard that the Empress has fallen ill. Pei Lang handed over a box. This, perhaps it would be good for your ladyship's cough. Shen Miao swept a glance at him and opened the box. It was a stalk of medicinal herb that looked inexplicably familiar. When Shen Miao took it out to take a look, her fingertips suddenly felt pain, and when she looked again, it was pricked by the thorns on the herb. Beads of blood flowed down her fingertips. Bai Lu exclaimed and wanted to bandage it for her. But Pei Lang stared fixedly at her fingertips and said somewhat woodenly, "This is red sleeve grass, useful for coughing." Shen Miao smiled instead. She threw the herb into the box and closed the box before returning it back to Pei Lang and said coldly, "No need. Ben Gong once had a stalk of this herb, but it withered at the end. Moreover, the stalk of herb that Ben Gong raised did not have thorns on it." Her words had other meaning. If one do not want to give gifts, then do not give. Not to give. Not to give. Her words had other meaning. If one do not want to give gifts, then do not give. Please take it back. With that, he turned around and left without looking at Pei Lang again. Pei Lang held the box tightly in his hands and stared at Shen Miao's back with a complicated gaze. "You, Ling Tutu, Ming, Shen, Miao Doctor." Pei Lang looked at the box. People always had to make some choices. The higher one was the 1-1, the higher 1-1-1 not. The higher one sit, the higher. The position. The higher the position, the one had one not. The higher one sat, the more helpless he was. He was helpless and had no other way. The pros and cons were clearly placed together. Which side of the tree would be chopped down and which side of the tree would monopolize the land. The ending was clear at a glance. He still had his own loved ones, and he wanted to protect them. So any friendship or secret thoughts could be put aside. What Mei Foran wanted to do with the blood from her fingertips was not a good thing. He was helping the tyrant to do evil and adding insult to injury. He turned his head and walked in another direction. People of different paths could not make plans together. He could not do anything. He could only watch with folded arms. He could only watch the tree that he had worked hard to grow in the palace fall into the mud. That big fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights. Chapter 995. In the entire imperial palace, only the cold palace was burnt to ashes. The sorrowful mood, the tearful accusation, the curses before death, and the deep despair all disappeared with the fire, leaving behind only the ghastly embers and the rumors that people talked about. Ming Qi's Empress, Shen, died. After the Shen family was executed for treason, the crown prince was deposed and committed suicide. Mei Foran was appointed as the new crown prince, and Fu Shang became the new empress. The lonely cold palace suddenly caught fire in the night and burned the deposed Empress Shen to ashes. This was a matter that made one sigh. The Emperor of Ming Qi was benevolent and did not let the Empress go to the netherworld because of the Shen family's disloyalty. He spared her life and only banished her to the cold palace, but this female had no fortune and died in the fire. History was written by the victors, and it was the same for the inner palace. With a change of dynasty, the traces of Empress Shen's life were completely covered up. She did not have any belongings left, as they were all destroyed in the fire. There was no one left in the first household of the Shen family, and it was really the end of the family dying out. That new crown princess empressly changed from her previous gentle and charming temperament and became somewhat fierce. She wholeheartedly supported her own brother and coaxed Fu Xiao until he was docile and the court was actually controlled by her. There is some meaning of the relatives monopolizing power. There were also some officials who faintly felt that something was wrong and wanted to secretly remind the emperor, but before they could take action, because of some inexplicable reasons, they were either demoted or exiled. Pei Lang looked at everything with cold eyes, but his heart was somewhat tired. In less than half a year after Shen Miao's death, Ming Qi almost turned the heaven and earth upside down. He indeed did not see wrongly. Mei Foran and her siblings had great skills and it was difficult to say if the Ming cheese country would fall into Mei Forin's hands in the future. He was loyal to Fu Xiu Yi and should have reminded Fu Xiu Yi, but after reminding a few times to no avail, he no longer reminded and even secretly felt that he deserved it. A person's heart was the easiest to change. A wise ruler could become an incapable ruler, and a loyal official could have disloyalty. Every night, when Pei Lang was sleeping, he would be awakened by a pair of eyes in his dreams. That pair of eyes were black and white, and there were no tears, but it made one's heart heavier than tears. Those were Shen Yao's eyes. Pei Lang used to think that what he did was right. He followed the trend of the times, seeking benefits and avoiding harm. This was his instinct, and it was also the best choice. But the longer time passed, the more he couldn't deceive himself. How is this the general trend? He obviously did not want Shen Miao to die like this. When did he start to have other feelings for Shen Miao? Pei Lang himself did not know. He was her teacher in Guangwentang. He watched as Shen Miao, an arrogant and pampered girl who did not know anything, insisted on marrying Fu Xiuyi. He watched as she entered the residence of Prince Ding and learned things that Fu Xiuyi did not like, becoming a Wang Fei, Empress, and finally a deposed Empress. She was actually a little stupid, but not very smart. She was a slow learner, but she had a kind of terrifying stubbornness. In the harem, she had some unnecessary kindness. Sometimes Pei Lang felt that Shen Miao was ridiculous to be willing to pay for a person, but at other times he felt envious of Fu Xiuyi. Later on, he couldn't help but pay more attention to her. Even he himself did not realize that he had to be extra patient in teaching Shen Miao's problems. But Pei Lang was an intelligent person, and intelligent people would not allow themselves to make mistakes. Thus, when he realized that he was having strange thoughts, he was determined to stop this mistake. So, when Shen Miao went to the Qin country to be a hostage, it was him who suggested it. But 5 years later, Shen Miao returned, and his thoughts still did not change. Chapter 996. He coldly watched as Shen Miao fought with Mei Forin in the inner palace until she was covered in injuries. He watched as her eyes dimmed and her haggard expression. Finally, when Fu Xiuyi asked him how to deal with the Shen family descendant, he said these words without thinking: "Cut the weeds and remove the roots." Cut the weeds in his heart and remove the roots in his heart. But he did not expect that Fu Xiuyi would cut the weeds and remove the roots and even remove Fu Ming. Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs, but Fu Xiuyi could even lay his hands on his own flesh and blood. One you could still use the excuse that it was an accident on the road, but Fu Ming could only use Fu Xiuyi's orders. Pei Lang remembered Shen Miao's eyes when she heard of Fu Ming's death. That pair of black and white eyes were wide open, and there were no tears, but it was so miserable that one could not bear to look at it. That big fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights, but it burned Pei Lang's heart of regret. He went to find the abbot of Pu Tual Monastery and asked how to remove the hindrance in one's heart. The abbot was an old monk and looked at him and shook his head. Heart disease needs medicine to cure. Was there any medicine for regret in this world? Pei Lang sought the eminent monk's guidance, and the monk said, "The reason why benefactor frequently dreams of old friends is because you owe them. She could not dissipate in your dreams because there is resentment that has not been resolved, unable to reincarnate and unable to obtain liberation." Pei Lang panicked and asked if there was a solution. The monk asked in reply, to set the past mistakes right and seek for a chance to start again. If benefactor's life is needed, is benefactor willing? Pei Lang said, "Willing." That monk said, "Benefactor should return." Why must one return? Pei Lang was puzzled. Benefactor is willing to pay with one's life, but one need to wait for that opportunity. That opportunity? What opportunity does it refer to? Pei Lang asked. Benefactor still owes people and has an unfulfilled wish. When the old friend's wish is fulfilled, benefactor will sacrifice his own life, and perhaps there would be a chance of survival. The monk said an Amitabha and said, "This is all that is said." This poor monk is unable to say more. Pei Lang thanked the monk and returned to the palace. What was Shen Miao's unfulfilled wish? Xun Miao's entire life was miserable and lonely. Most likely she wanted to see the enemy go to hell and the Shun family regain their innocence. There was a chance to start again, but one must wait. Wait or not? Wait. Pei Lang made his decision. This life was so long that he was willing to use this life to make up for a mistake. Winter passed and spring came. Wild geese came and went. When a dynasty's fate was nearing its end, the aura of decline would envelop it. Ming Qi was no longer the Ming Qi of the past. Exorbitant taxes and corvée labor. The common people had no way to make a living. Corrupt officials colluded with each other. The court was in chaos, and the emperor was fatuous. The crown prince, on the other hand, was busy forming cliques all day long, wishing that he could ascend the throne as soon as possible, taking back the military power but without a good general to drive them. Ming Qi was a piece of fat meat that everyone wanted to take a bite of. The faraway Great Liang attacked and annexed the Qin country and finally launched an attack on Ming Qi. Like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, victory came too easily as they fought all the way to the gates of the Ding capital. After setting up camp, everyone in the Ding capital felt insecure, and the common people's doors were tightly shut as the atmosphere of the country's demise filled the air. In that big tent, someone was sitting and polishing a longsword. Ming Qi's fate has come to an end. The white-clad gentleman waved his folding fan as he walked in, and there was no emotion in his voice. Heard that the imperial palace is being cleaned up tonight. The ones that needed to be cleaned up were the womenfolk in the palace, the concubines, palace maids, and even the imperial princess. Rather than falling into the enemy's hands to be humiliated, it was better to die cleanly and preserve one's integrity. Chapter 997. Was he really trying to preserve his integrity? Among those people, how many actually didn't want to die? The man stopped wiping his sword and raised his head, revealing a peerlessly beautiful face. He had a pair of gentle peach blossom eyes, but they were filled with coldness. Oh, has Empress Shin's body been found? Ji Shu opened the door of the mosquito net and walked in. When he heard what was said, he said, inquired about it. Nothing. The cold palace was burned clean, and not even a piece of clothing was left. Gao Yang ridiculed. Fu Xiao is really afraid of people gossiping and handled it very neatly. It is really a pity for the Shun family. Ji Yushu sighed. If the Shun family was here, why would he end up in such a situation? Xie Jingxing said plainly, only seeking one's own destruction. He took another look at the red rope in his hands. The color of the rope had faded a little, but it was still firm. Later on, he went to many battlefields, and this red rope never fell off. Xie Jingxing shook his head as he thought of the girl's words of congratulations that night. He would have to go back on his promise. Who knew that in just a few short years, the Ming Qi's rivers and mountains would be destroyed so quickly? Even without Great Liang, it would not last long. He had indeed returned triumphantly, and he had planned to repay her wish for the sake of that cup of farewell wine and compensate her with a firework. However, he had already passed, and there was no chance for him to do so in this lifetime. He said, tomorrow morning, attack the city. The Great Liang's flag fluttered in the wind. The sky of June changed in an instant. Black clouds pressed down on the city. The wind blew violently, as if a heavy downpour was about to arrive in the next moment. There was no one left in the palace. Corpses were strewn everywhere. There were palace ladies who hanged themselves, and there were also servants who were beheaded by the Great Liang soldiers. Blood flowed everywhere, and there were millions of corpses. Pei Lang sat in the tea hall, pouring tea for himself. He poured the table slowly. Green smoke rose from the corner of the table, emitting a fragrance. It was like the whisper of a beauty enchanting. He glanced out the window. On the day of Shun Miao's death, it was also this kind of weather. The sky was gloomy, and suddenly heavy rain poured down. He had waited for this day for a long time. The Great Liang's army had arrived, and Ming Qi's fate was about to end. Fu Xiao, Yi, and Mei Furen were about to reach the end of their lives, and Shun Miao's wish should be fulfilled. He finally had a chance to turn back from the mistake he had made. He emptied the contents of the phial into the flagon at the other end and filled his glass. Your wish is about to come true. Unfortunately, the one who fulfilled your dying wish was not me. On top of the city gate tower, the army was pressing down on the border. The Emperor and the Empress were both tied to the flagpoles with their hands tied behind their backs. Everyone had their own selfish motives. For the sake of their own survival, they could also destroy the survival of others. This was something that Mei Foran and Fu Xiu often did, and now it was their turn to have a taste of it. The officials in Ming Qi's palace kidnapped their own country's Emperor and Empress and came to the Great Liang to ask for surrender. They were willing to use Empress Monarch's head to beg the other party to spare their lives. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter, and when the wall falls, everyone pushes it. No matter how favored Mei Foran was, at this moment, she could not move anyone. Oh, and the new crown prince, Fu Sheng. Her head would have long been chopped off by Fu Sheng's boot-licking Xie Chong Wu and Xie Chong Chao and given to the great Liang's general to curry favor. Under the city gate tower, the male sitting on the tall horse lazily narrowed his eyes. One did not know when the black clouds had dispersed, but gradually the golden sun shone over the entire city. His robes were gorgeous, and even though his military uniform was stained with blood, it was still untainted by a speck of dust and had a natural pressure. It formed a sharp contrast with the emperor who was tied up on top of the tower. Chapter 998. Xie Jingxing. Fu Xiu gritted his teeth. The heir of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, the son of Xie Ding, the brother of Xie Chong Wu and Xie Chong Chao. No one would have thought that the youth who had died in the battlefield, the youth who had declined along with the residents of the Marquis of Lineage, would reappear in front of the world with this appearance after so many years. He was the blood brother of the great Liang's Emperor Yonglu, the noble Prince Rui, and was also the great Liang's young marshal, commanding the Mou army, which caused people to tremble with fear. Long time no see, son of the Fu family. Xie Jingxing greeted him. Everyone knew that the great Liang's Emperor Yong Li's younger brother was the most glorious and fought for him under the heavens, and was the most upright and forthright. Such a heroic character was originally the heir of the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and Mei Foran stared at that man. She was extremely afraid that no matter how confident she was in victory, she would lose her sense of propriety when it came to a matter of life and death. However, she had always relied on men to get what she wanted step by step. At this juncture, all her tricks were useless. She blamed Fu Xiu for not having the ability and for the dynasty to be destroyed. Looking at the handsome man below the city walls, he had a natural air of nobility and could not help but stare at him. Her eyes were full of emotions. Xie Jingxing frowned and asked Ji Yushu, "Shen Miao lost to this woman?" Ji Yushu said, "Correct." She then added, "Looking at the average appearance, one really do not know if the Ming Qi Emperor's eyes grew crooked." Both of their voices were not concealed, and the great Liang army roared with laughter, and Mei Foran's face flushed red with hatred. Fu Xiu was also angry in his heart as he looked at Xie Jingxing and said in a deep voice, "If you want to kill, then kill. Why the need to talk nonsense? Still pretending to be a man until now." Ji Yushu said in disdain, "Third older brother, this Ming Qi Emperor is anxious to die." Xie Jingxing smiled lazily and said, "This prince originally did not want to kill you and was too lazy to do it personally. But I owe your little empress a wish. Coincidentally, this ending is also the ending that you prepared for me many years ago. So, whether it is public or private, I have to return it to you." He opened his hand, and Gao Yang handed over the longbow and the silver arrow. Xie Jingxing placed his hand on the bow and arrow and heard a shio sound. Mei Foran, who was on the tower, was hit by an arrow. However, the arrow was not aimed at his chest. It just so happened to avoid the vital parts. Blood flowed out incessantly. It was a ghastly sight. Mei Foran was in so much pain that she almost fainted, and Fu Xiuyi's calm expression also changed twice. The scariest thing in the world was not death, but waiting for it. Xie Jingxing smiled gently and spread his hands again. Gao Yang sent another 2 silver arrows. He knocked 2 arrows on the longbow and whistled. The tens of thousands of troops of the Great Liang pulled their bows and aimed at the 2 of them. The flags on the platform fluttered in the wind, sounding like the wailing of ghosts. When the last of the black clouds dispersed, the golden sun covered the entire land, scorching the earth. The man's purple robe fluttered slightly in the wind. His smile was cold, but there seemed to be the mischievousness of a young man between his brows. He stood at the bottom of the city gate tower and looked at the 2 people who had panic in their eyes. He laughed heartily. "I'm sorry, little emperor. I'm indebted to a lady who entrusted me to take your dog life." Release. Tens of thousands of arrows ferociously shot towards the 2 people on the tower. It was like a ferocious beast coming out of its cage, almost covering the sky and earth. Not even a trace of the golden sun could be revealed as it swallowed the 2 of them. One could not see anything at all. In the imperial palace, that green-clad male had already fallen asleep in front of the table. Beside his feet, a lantern tilted, and the candle inside fell down. In less than a moment, the cloth curtains were set ablaze. The fire slowly spread, burning through the Zhonghua Palace, burning through the throne room, until the entire palace was enveloped in raging flames, turning everything red. Third older brother, the imperial palace is on fire. Ji Yushu looked into the distance and said in shock, "Send people to put out the fire." "No need." Xie Jingxing stopped him. "This Mingqi imperial palace is not clean. It will be good to burn it." He raised his brows, white sun flames. "I did not miss the appointment." "What is the meaning of that?" Ji Yushu did not understand. Xie Jingxing looked at the corner of the sky that was dyed red by the fire. In his eyes, there was a figure drinking alone in the bright moonlight. "This imperial court has let you down, so this prince will help you to overthrow this imperial court." He said softly, "This is most likely your wish." But he did not notice that the red rope that was firmly tied around his wrist and did not fall off for a few years suddenly broke and fell into the fire on the ground, turning into ashes. No one heard the long sigh of the female in the ashes. So this was a calamity. So this was fate. What one's eyes saw might not be true. What one's ears heard might not be true. In 2 lifetimes, he stood at the distant peak and smiled carelessly. One would only understand what kind of person he was when one was in front of him. He was cynical, but the most sincere. He was full of schemes, but he was loyal. He could command 1,000 troops with a cup of warm wine and could also drive a horse to the top of a building for a stranger he met by chance. He would say sorry to the emperor child that he was entrusted by a young lady to take his dog life. He lived the heaviest and most unrestrained life, the darkest and most realistic life. Born from despicableness was infinite sincerity, looking disdainfully at the world, coldly competing, and finally unhurriedly holding the chess piece in his sleeves, grasping that little bit of light in his palm. This was her question, but only he could answer it. "It is raining." Gao Yang kept his fan. "Summer is really strange." Xie Jingxing smiled. "Enter the city." "For what?" "To overthrow the imperial power." Chapter 999. Xun Miao had a very long dream. That dream seemed to be very, very long as a lifetime. She watched as a bystander watched herself from a babbling baby to a bouncing young girl, from a bouncing young girl to a slender young lady, then to a young married woman, then to the unattainable ruler of the 6 palaces in the palace, and finally to the deposed Empress in the cold palace, turning into ashes in the raging fire. She watched herself fall in love with Fu Xiu-yi and begged Shen Xian to marry her to Fu Xiu-yi. She sat at the side, desperately trying to stop her foolish actions, but it was futile. No one could hear her words, so she could only watch everything happen again. From a bystander's point of view, how foolish was the things that she did in the past. Xun Miao finally understood now. The most terrifying thing was to once again experience the heart-wrenching pain of the past. Her teenage years ended after she married Fu Xiu-yi. Those carefree days, even if she was called stupid by others, were at the end free and happy. And when she became Ding Wangfei, she was forced to be involved in these intrigues. Even her pair of children could not escape. The people around her left one by one, and the first household of the Shun family gradually declined. The once flourishing flowers were like flowers that bloomed to the extreme in spring, but once spring passed, summer came, and when the autumn wind blew, it would wither, making it look cold and shabby. In that dark life, where there was almost no light, there were some things that she had overlooked. Those things were like the stars in the dark night, covered by other things and became unreal, accidentally discovered, bright as before. Also like the embers of fireworks that accidentally broke into one's own courtyard, with a little bright color, making that dry and cold night become fragrant. She saw Xie Jingxing, not that stubborn youth, not that hero that died on the battlefield. He was as arrogant as he was in the future, riding a tall horse, carrying a longbow, and in the midst of talking and laughing, he overturned an imperial court. He drank the farewell wine that she gave him under the bright moonlight, and on the dark day, when the city was breached, he gave her a wish that she could not fulfill in her entire life. They had seen a fireworks show in the daytime, even if they hadn't broken the promise of that New Year's Eve. They were clearly strangers who met by chance, but he had become the most indispensable person in her life. Because of him, her wish was fulfilled, and because of him, she was reborn. It was just that the fate of that life was too short. Such a beautiful and anticipated fate was forced to stop because of the teasing of fate. What a pity. That was why there was a chance in this life. That short-lived fate was able to continue. All the unspoken questions seemed to no longer need to be spoken. Many things disappeared at that moment, including the questions and the answers. The karma of the past determines the outcome of the future. Shun Miao slowly opened her eyes. As far as the eye could see, it was the clear sky after the rain. An exquisite sachet was hanging in the corner of the mosquito net, probably to dilute the bitter smell of medicine. The fragrance and the smell of the herbs mixed together, creating a thought-provoking smell. Shun Miao looked up to her side. The young man leaned over the headboard, one hand still holding her hand tightly. His eyes were closed, and there was a green stubble on his chin. It was not that obvious, but it was different from his usual pampered appearance. The joints of his hand were distinct, slender, and warm, just enough to completely cover her hand. Shun Miao only moved slightly, and Xie Jingxing woke up. Seeing that her eyes were open, Xie Jingxing was surprised for a moment, as if he had not reacted. After a pause, he suddenly said, "You are awake." Chapter 1000. Shun Miao nodded her head. "Do you feel anything wrong?" Xie Jingxing inquired. "Let Gao Yang come in for a look?" He usually had a lazy and indifferent look, as if he did not care about anything, but at this moment there was a rare look of anxiety. Shun Miao said, "No need. I'm very good." She then asked, "How is teacher pay?" Xie Jingxing's face suddenly turned black. Shun Miao saw his face change and was stunned for a moment before understanding. She did not know how to explain. Was Pei Lang hateful? Naturally, he was hateful. In the past lifetime, he took her blood from her fingertips and gave it to Mei Foran. Even though she did not know if Mei Foran's changing one's fate was real or not, there were some thoughts of helping the evildoer, and that sentence of cutting the weeds and removing the roots indirectly led to Fu Ming's ending. Shun Miao's feelings towards Pei Lang were very complicated. She could ignore it for herself, but as it concerned Fu Ming, she was unable to forgive Pei Lang. But Pei Lang finally used his life to exchange for a chance for her to start over. It was unclear what kind of feeling it was. One was unable to be purely grateful or purely hate a person, so one could only draw a line in the relationship. Shun Miao did not want to be involved with Pei Lang in the relationship of owing and being owed. The matters of the past lifetime were already in the previous lifetime, but in this lifetime she did not want to owe Pei Lang anything, and also did not want to be owed by Pei Lang. She remembered very clearly that when that childlike assassin pounced over, it was Pei Lang who blocked the heaviest blow for her. If Pei Lang died because of her, then the involvement of these two lifetimes would not be clean. But looking at Xie Jingxing's expression, Shun Miao knew that he had misunderstood. When Xie Jingxing got angry because of these matters, Shen Miao inexplicably felt that he was like the little wolf dog that Luo Sui raised in the Luo family's army. She hurriedly stroked the little wolfhound's fur and said, "He saved my life, so he's my benefactor. He's not related to me, but he risked his life to save me. I can't just accept this kindness." Xie Jingxing's expression then eased up a little and said, Gao Yang had taken a look. He woke up once last night and was really lucky. He then glanced at Shen Miao. "Why aren't you waking up? If you don't wake up, I'm going to chop off that Taoist priest's head." "Priest?" Shen Miao was startled. "Are you talking about Priest Qi Yin? What Taoist priest?" Xie Jingxing said in disdain. "He is just a Jianghu swindler who earns money. The so-called Taoist priest Scarlet Flame left Prince Rui's residence early in the morning. Before leaving, he took the good antique vase in the hall, saying that it was a thank-you gift. She did not know what kind of expert a Taoist priest who was always calculating money was. When Shen Miao heard Xie Jingxing say that the Taoist priest took a vase and left, she had some doubts in her heart. That long dream had solved a lot of her doubts. In fact, it was not necessarily true, but Shen Miao did not know why. But she felt that everything that happened in the dream was the complete story of her previous lifetime. That Taoist priest was indeed someone that she met on the way back to Mingqi from the Qin country. She thought that he was a refugee who escaped from the famine and disguised himself as a Taoist priest to earn a living. She was after all Shun Xian's daughter and was somewhat generous in her heart. She gave the other a bowl of water, but did not think that it would implicate so many things. If she really listened to that Taoist priest in her previous lifetime and did not step on the road back to the Ding capital, most likely there would not be those tragedies later on. But if she were to do it all over again, even though she knew that it was a road of no return, she would not have any other choice because her pair of children were in the palace. But that Taoist priest at the end completed a portion of fate. Chapter 1001. Shen Miao remembered it very clearly. In the dream, her corpse was burnt to ashes by the fire that Fu Xiu ordered people to light, and nothing was left. However, that resentment was extremely heavy and refused to dissipate. Mei Foran ordered people to perform the ritual. She could not become a malicious spirit and was unable to reincarnate, so her soul was imprisoned in the palace walls and wandered around all day, becoming weaker by the day. All the things that she left behind were burnt, and if it was not for the red rope in Xie Jingxing's hand, she would have long dissipated from heaven and earth. That red rope could save her from some troubles. Those days where she was unable to reincarnate, Shen Miao's spirit rested in the red rope on Xie Jingxing's wrist and lived in a muddle, until the day the city was breached. She saw Fu Sheng die in the hands of his own people. She saw Mei Foran and Fu Xiu being tied up on the city walls. She saw both of them being killed by thousands of arrows piercing through their hearts. She saw the palaces that she hated for her entire life being burnt to the ground and turned into ashes. The unfulfilled wish in her heart, the soul that was not willing to disperse, finally obtained complete peace at that moment. The red rope was broken, and she could let it go. Thus time reversed, and Pei Lang used his life as the price for her to be reborn. Xie Jingxing saw that Shen Miao did not speak and asked with a frown, "What is the matter with you?" Shen Miao recovered to her senses and looked at him without speaking. She was somewhat agitated. She was just thinking that in the past life she had no interaction with Xie Jingxing. So how could they be tied together in this life by a free combination of factors that could not be pulled apart? So it was because of the involvement in the past life. In the beginning, when Xie Jingxing owed her a wish, it was just a joke. She did not think that he would keep his promise and personally kill Fu Xiu and take revenge for her. She softly asked, "Xie Jingxing, what wish do you have?" Xie Jingxing glanced at her. "Why? You want to complete it for me? I can give you a wish." She said seriously, "As long as I am able to complete it, I will do my best." Her expression was too solemn that it made Xie Jingxing slightly glance at her. In just a moment, his lips curled up and said with a smile that was not a smile, "All right." He then leaned close to Shen Miao's ear and whispered, "My wish. You will definitely be able to do it." Shen Miao asked, "What is it?" Give me a child, he said nonchalantly. Shen Miao looked at him for a while. Xie Jingxing touched his nose and was about to speak when he heard Shen Miao answer, "All right." Xie Jingxing was startled. Shen Miao stared at him with a slight smile on her lips. It was different from the past. It was not the kind of smile that had to be held back. Instead, it was a smile that came from the bottom of her heart, as if she was truly happy. There was even a hint of gentleness in it. Xie Jingxing subconsciously reached out to touch her forehead and said, "You really have not recovered from your illness." Shen Miao pushed his hand away and said, "Xie Jingxing, on the day of my birthday, you must have been frightened." Xie Jingxing released his hand and saw that her expression was calm, and there was nothing strange about it. So he was slightly relieved and followed along with her words. "What do you think?" "I thought." He trailed off. Even now, when he recalled that scene, Xie Jingxing could not help but feel a lingering fear. Shen Miao was lying in a pool of blood with an unconscious appearance, as if she would never wake up again. His heart was also gripped at the same time, as if it was the first time he brought the Xie family army to the battlefield in the northern Jiang. Even when he was plotted against and his life and death was unknown, there was no fear in his eyes. He also had things that he was afraid of, people that he was afraid of losing, and weaknesses. And these three things happened to be the same, which was this person in front of him. "Let me make amends." Shen Miao said, "Isn't your birthday already passed a long time ago? How about taking today as making up for it?" Chapter 1002. Xie Jingxing looked at her inexplicably and said, "Understood. Your body is not well, so stop tormenting. It is only a flesh wound." Shen Miao took the initiative to say, "Let's go out." She was somewhat abnormal after she woke up today. Firstly, Shen Miao was not a playful person, and secondly, she seemed to be much more amiable than before. Her previous temperament was somewhat prideful, and even though one did not know why she was habitually putting on airs, Shen Miao was a person with strong self-esteem. Otherwise, she would not have a cold war with Xie Jingxing for so long. Xie Jingxing was very surprised that she took the initiative to please him. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "Did you do something wrong to me behind my back?" Shen Miao nodded her head seriously. "Is it related to Pei Lang?" Xie Jingxing's face turned cold. Shen Miao took a deep breath. She felt that Xie Jingxing's conduct could not be spoiled as his thoughts had deviated to such an extent. She then regained her usual expression and asked, "Are you going or not?" Xie Jingxing had not even opened his mouth when he heard a voice from behind, "Go." Gao Yang walked in and looked at Shen Miao, heard that you were awake, so came over to take a look. That injury was only a flesh wound and did not reach inside, so it is nothing much. He then said to Xie Jingxing, "You should also go out and exercise your muscles and bones. These days you have been staying in the house and did not go out to bask in the sun. The weather is not bad, so do not return too late." He then carried the medical box in the house and left. Xie Jingxing and Shen Miao were silent, facing each other. After a moment, Xie Jingxing smiled. "What do you want to play? Since I came here, I have not gone out for a stroll." Shen Miao said, "I'm not that familiar with Longyi. You, and I will just casually walk around and talk to me about the matters here." Shen Miao suddenly thought of something and said, "Oh right, that day I was in the pavilion outside of Bai Shao Lu and let Ban East buy a lot of fireworks. Most likely they are still there, so bring that as well." "Why are you looking at fireworks in broad daylight?" Xie Jingxing stared at her. "Is your brain also injured?" Shen Miao asked in reply, "Have you seen fireworks in broad daylight?" Xie Jingxing said, "Who is foolish to see it before? I have seen it before." Shen Miao answered. Xie Jingxing stared at her in confusion. "The fireworks at night are beautiful, and the ones in the day might not be inferior. Since you have not seen it before, I will bring you to see it." Shen Miao smiled slightly and was about to get off the bed. However, she had been lying in bed for the past few days, and her legs and feet were very sore. Now that she was down, the pain made her gasp. When Xie Jingxing saw this, he stood up with a smile. He crossed his arms and looked at her as if he was watching a good show. "Do you want me to help you? Will you?" Shen Miao saw his expression and knew that he did not have any good intentions. Xie Jingxing said, "Beg me, and I will help you." He leaned over, as if he wanted to listen carefully to Shun Miao's soft words. Shun Miao felt that Xie Jingxing's character was really hard to fathom. He was clearly strong and somewhat overbearing, and in his youth he already had schemes and calculations that an adult would not be able to match. But right now, he was like a mischievous youth who never got tired of teasing others. She stared at Xie Jingxing's handsome face and suddenly had an idea. With a pa sound, she kissed Xie Jingxing's cheek. Xie Jingxing was stunned. Shun Miao moved her gaze away and looked at the sachet hanging at the head of the bed. "Shun Miao," Xie Jingxing frowned as he looked at her. "Your illness is not light. You need to let Gao Yang come and take a look." Making a posture to leave, Shun Miao anxiously shouted at him, "Xie Jingxing." His footsteps paused, and when he turned his head back, he had a mischievous look on his face. Shun Miao knew that she was fooled and felt regret in her heart, but she saw Xie Jingxing laughing out loud and suddenly walked forward to carry her up. Shun Miao subconsciously hooked her arms around his neck. Chapter 1003. Xie Jingxing carried her out just like that, causing the servants in the residence of Prince Rui to look at both of them. In Shun Miao's previous and current life, she had never been so close to a male. No matter if it was in the residence of Prince Ding or the inner palace, she had to put on the airs of an empress. But even Mei Furin did not seem to be carried by Fu Xiao Yi in front of so many people. If that was really the case, then the title of a fatuous ruler and femme fatale would not be able to escape. Could it be that she was a dignified and virtuous empress in her previous life, and in this life she had to bear the title of femme fatale? Xie Jingxing was rather like a fatuous ruler. Shun Miao's imagination ran wild as her eyes swept across those servants who were covering their mouths and sniggering. She was annoyed in her heart and pinched Xie Jingxing. "What are you doing? Quickly put me down." "TSK, no to be shy." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows, and his tone was so bad that it made one want to beat him up. He said, "Just now one do not know who was the one who insulted my innocence in broad daylight." Even words like insulting innocence were used. Shun Miao could only try hard to calm her emotions. But she saw Luo Tan walking over. Most likely Luo Tan did not think that she would encounter such a scene. Even though she usually had a big heart, she was after all a young female and felt somewhat uncomfortable. Shun Miao let Xie Jingxing put her down, and Luo Tan did not know where to place her eyes. Shun Miao asked her, "It has been hard on you these days." "Not at all. Not at all." Luo Tan waved her hands repeatedly and was a little afraid when she saw Xie Jingxing at the side. At that time, she wholeheartedly wanted to vent Shun Miao's anger and threw a fit at Xie Jingxing, but later on she regretted it. The other party had a high position and was even the great Liang's Prince Rui. If he were to vent his anger on Shun Miao, then her sin would be big. But seeing Shun Miao and Xie Jingxing being so intimate, it seemed that there was no quarrel, and her heart could not help but feel gratified. "Oh, right." Luo Tan suddenly thought of something and took something out from her sleeves and placed it in Shun Miao's hands. "This is what Taoist priest Qi Yin gave to me before he left, and let me pass it to you, saying that it is for your parting room." It was a small wooden box with a chicken and a snake carved on it. Luo Tan said, "One do not know why there is a chicken and a snake." "Shun Miao," she said, "this is a dragon and phoenix." Priest Qi Yan's carving skills were really not flattering. If Shun Miao did not understand, one would not be able to tell that it was a dragon and a phoenix. Luo Tan choked as Shun Miao opened the wooden box and took out 2 red ropes from it. "This," Luo Tan said, "these are just 2 red ropes. What's so special about it?" "You still said it was strange and strange. I thought it was something valuable." This Taoist priest is really stingy. He clearly has a whole valley of medicinal herbs, but he wants to give this. Shun Miao stared at the rope and her eyes wavered. In her past life, she had obtained a rope from a Taoist priest. That rope had accompanied her for many years. Later on, it passed through many hands and fell into the hands of Xie Jingxing. Her fragrant soul had once rested in the red string, and it was also the medium that connected her and Xie Jingxing's fate in her previous life. Suddenly, he felt that the red string was somewhat familiar. She stretched out her hands and tied the red string on her hands. Luo Ten looked at her actions and said in shock, "Biao, youngest sister, you're not going to wear this?" Shun Miao looked at the red string on her hands with satisfaction and picked up another one before saying to Xie Jingxing, "Stretch out your hand." Xie Jingxing said, "I do not wear." "Stretch out your hand." Shun Miao repeated. Xie Jingxing looked at her incredulously. "I am a male. This can ensure safety." Shun Miao casually made up, "You wear this with me. If you're in danger, I will know, and if I am in danger, you will also be able to feel it." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.